Thank you very much, Ayisha. Ayisha Osori is the director of Open Society Foundations based in the UK, and they sponsor a lot of projects on the continent. But that's not why we're bringing Ayisha. You know, we've been talking about women in politics in Nigeria. 2 days ago or so, a woman was installed as the president of Namibia. When are we going to get there in Nigeria? We moved from about 7 women to 5. Now we're down to 3 or 4. And now one has been taken out again. So 3. That's why we're doing this session. The film in focus on showcase will be Double Minority by Kaderi Ahmed. We're just working with our directors and associates. Thank you very much. But Aisha's talk is outside of the screening of the film. She has not seen the film. Ayisha is one of the few women who went to politics. If you don't mind, I would say they showed up okay. Man of speaking, they showed up Pepe, but then she did something remarkable. She documented her experience. And that book for some of us remained evergreen because it says a lot about what has been happening to Nigerian women who went into politics, which is what Kaderi has focused on. To anchor that session will be Larry, who is the director of this festival, but then he went upstairs to sort out this. So Ayisha, we'd like to have you for the next 10, 15 minutes because we know you have another meeting. Actually, we're having a technical problem because we didn't know that London is on different time zone. So the time we were saying there was different from what they were doing there. So if you are ready for us, we can go. Thank you, Ayisha.
All right, thank you very much. And if you can't hear me clearly, please feel free about interjecting and asking me to speak up.
Okay,
it's a pleasure to. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all today at the IREP2025 International Documentary Film Festival, and I really wish that I could have been there in person. I'm sure that there have been lots of protocols that have already been observed, and I'll just piggyback on that and just say good afternoon to everyone and welcome, and it's a pleasure to be here. Now, my brief was to talk about the endangerment of women in society, but obviously I'm going to be looking at it from a political lens. But because we're in a forum for storytelling, I would like to actually start with a short story and then make my remarks short as they will be, and hopefully stay online for a few minutes in case there's an opportunity to engage, but I will have to leave on the hour, and I'll try and make this brief. So walk with me. Just imagine that you're in a room about 3 paces long and 2 wide. It's like a broom closet or a disused tool room. It's a very dark room, and a young girl sits there naked. She looks about 10, but is actually nearly 18. The door is locked and nobody comes. The door is always locked and nobody ever comes, except sometimes, because now she has no longer any concept of time or interval. The door rattles open and a person or several people are there. No one comes in, but they peep at her. Sometimes someone will poke at her with a stick or even hit her with it. The food bowl and the water jug are hastily filled. The door is locked. The eyes disappear. The people at the door never say anything, but the child, who has not always lived in this little room, can remember sunlight and sometimes speaks and says, "I will be good. Please let me out. I will be good." But they never answer. The people of Nigeria all know that this girl is there. Some of them have come to see her. Others are merely content to know that she's there. They all know that she has to be there. Some of them understand why, and some do not. But they all understand that their happiness, the beauty of their cities, the tenderness of their friendships, the health of their children, the wisdom of their scholars, the skill of their makers, even the abundance of their harvest, the flow of their oil and gas, the mounds of their minerals, and the kindly weathers of the skies depend wholly on this child's abominable misery. This is usually explained to children in Nigeria when they are between 8 and 12. Whenever they seem capable of understanding, And most of those who come to see the child are young people, though often enough an adult comes or comes back to see the child. No matter how well the matter has been explained to them, these young spectators are always shocked and sickened at the sight. They feel disgust, which they had thought themselves superior to. They feel anger, outrage, impotence, despite all the explanations. They would like to do something for the girl, but there's nothing they can do. If the girl were brought up into the sunlight out of that vile place, if she were cleaned and fed and comforted, that would be a good thing. Indeed, but if it were done in that day and on that hour, all the prosperity and beauty and delight of Nigeria would wither and be destroyed. Those are the terms. To exchange all the goodness and grace of every life in Nigeria for that single small improvement, to throw away the happiness of thousands for the chance of happiness of one, that would be to let guilt within the walls indeed. The terms are strict and absolute. There may not even be a kind word spoken to the child. Often the young people go home in tears or in a tearless rage when they have seen the child and face this terrible paradox. They may brood over it for a few weeks or years, but as time goes on, they begin to realize that even if the girl was to be released, she would not get much good of her freedom. A little vague pleasure of warmth and food, but little more. She's too degraded and now an imbecile to know any real joy. She has been locked up for too long, and her habits are too uncouth for her to respond to humane treatment. Indeed, after so long, they tell themselves, she would probably feel wretched without the walls around her and the darkness for her eyes. Their tears at the bitter injustice dry when they begin to perceive the terrible justice of reality and to accept it. They know that they, like the child, are not free. They know compassion. It is the existence of the child and their knowledge of its existence that makes possible the nobility of their architecture, the buoyancy of their music, the profundity of their science. It is because of that girl child that they are so gentle with other children. They know that if the wretched one were not there sniveling in the dark, the other one, the football player, could not dazzle the world with his skills. At times, one of the adolescent girls or boys who go to see the child does not go home to weep or rage, does not in fact go home at all. Sometimes also a man or a woman, much older, falls silent for a day or two, then leaves home. These people walk out into the street and walk down the street alone. They keep walking and they walk straight out of Nigeria, through the beautiful Golden Gates. They keep walking across the rich farmlands of Nigeria. Each one goes alone, youth or girl, man or woman. Each alone they go west or north, south or east, towards the mountains, the sea, the desert, the forests. They go on. They leave Nigeria. They walk ahead into the darkness and they do not come back. So what is the general context within which our conversation is taking place today? What are the realities for women in our society today? What are we witnessing across the globe with democracy, representation, ethno-nationalism, and clear efforts to roll back the meager gains for gender equality? Now, I really do not want to spend too much time talking about what's wrong. We do know what's wrong. We also know what's right. But it seems impossible to have this conversation without sharing at least a little data. So the reports of rape of women have surged from 29% in 2020 to 65% in 2022. It might not be that we're raping more, it's just that we're reporting more. Alarmingly, almost 50% of women believe that wife beating is justified under certain conditions. Only 13% of Nigerian women have ever used a computer, compared to 21% of men, underscoring a digital divide. 12.5% of Nigerian women aged between 15 to 49 were married before the age of 15, and almost 78% of trafficked persons in Nigeria in 2022 were female. And so Nigeria is Africa's largest democracy by population, is lowest ranked in the entire sub-Saharan Africa when it comes to women's representation in parliament. Right now, we're 4.4% in the House of Representatives and 3.6% in the Senate. Today, 14 states out of 36. Sorry, excuse me, I'm in a room where if I'm not moving, the light goes out to save energy. So 14 states currently have no female legislators in the state assembly. Some of these states, mostly in Northwest and Northeast, have never elected women to the legislature, not during experiments with democracy in 1960, 1979, and definitely not during experiments with democracy in 1960, 1979, and not since 1999. Yet in what could be a perverse celebration of International Women's Day, on March 6th this year, the 109-member Senate suspended Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan, one of only 4 female senators, after she accused the Senate president of sexual harassment. The accusation and how it is being handled highlights multiple issues: social permissiveness for sexual harassment, sexual violence, the state of Nigeria's representative democracy, and the example it sets across the region and the continent, and the realities of women navigating the political space. For instance, in a response reminiscent of the Me Too campaigns, both men and women in Nigeria are proclaiming loudly that Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan's accusations will make it even more difficult for women's political participation. And one has to wonder, how much harder can it be, considering the number of women elected into parliament has decreased at each election cycle since 2007. And no female politician has ever made such an allegation anyway. So really, what impact does this really have? And in speaking about the danger to women, specifically in the political space, we know that the politics is the personal is the political. And so politics has implications for women in the social, economic, technological, environmental spheres, because politics is about who gets what, when, how. So I plan for the rest of the time I have to just weave a little bit of my experience captured in my book that was mentioned in my introduction, Love Does Not Win Elections, and to take elements from the experiences of others. And I'll keep it short. So in 2014, I decided to run for the PDP tickets for the House of Representatives. I chose FCT because I lived in FCT. And I have to confess, it was really an eye-opening experience. I consider it still the best education I ever received about my country. What I experienced and continue to observe has ramifications for democracy, our freedoms generally as citizens, the rights and responsibilities that we have. And it raises questions not only about the kind of citizens we are, but what types of humans we are and what type of society we want to live in. So the first observation and experience is the untruths. I put this as the untruths, and which one of the untruths, and there are several untruths, but one of the untruths is women have to be twice as good as men. And that's a global understanding. You hear, it's not just something that Nigerian women say, you hear women all over the world talk about it a lot, that they consider that they have to be twice as good, 3 times as good as their peers, whether it's in the corporate world, in the legal world, medical profession, to attain the heights that men attain with ease. Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan, at least for those who have followed her in the media, has always been passionate about industry. I think she's taken the Ajakuta steel rolling mills as a pet project, and reportedly had been a very good chairperson of the Senate Committee on Local Content. And it's arguably the truth that she was removed from that position because she was effective and was probably asking questions and not willing to play ball in an institution with a very terrible reputation for corruption that we all know about. And yes, might not have started with the 10th assembly, but it's a track record that we've witnessed over decades, going as far back as the 60s, as between 79 and 83, and now between 1999 to date. Another untruth that we hear, so just to close that untruth, it's not true that if you're good enough. So she was good enough. She fought the game the way it was supposed to be played, which is another untruth. We're told as women, just play the game, don't complain. I would say she played the game because she's been in the field. She tried to run for governor first in 2019, faced a really terrible personal battle with the governor at that time. Then she switched in the last election cycle to run for the Senate, and again, a very hectic campaign. Didn't win on the count, but won through the courts. So you would say she's playing the game. So why isn't she still winning? At the rate that we're going, she might have the dubious distinction of being the first and who knows, maybe the only legislator to ever be recalled in Nigeria. We've never had that, but the speed with which it's happening should send a message to women who think and men who think women just have to be twice as good and they'll be fine. This case is showing us that that's not true. Case is also showing us that playing the game, the way the men played is also not proof that you'll be able to prevail. Another untruth we tell ourselves is that we have a level playing field. And yes, to a certain extent, I do agree that what ails our elections, what ails the political parties and the primaries and the way people are selected is not special in any way for women, I would say, I agree. But then the impact on women's political participation is special. It's different because we live in a patriarchy. We live in a society that already looks less favorably at women in leadership positions in anywhere, domestic, private, public. So there are costs that many women will stay away from politics because we live in a patriarchy. So it's not quite a level playing field socially, culturally, traditionally for women. But yes, if you go onto the field, you would say that, yes, when it comes to paying elections, contesting primaries is a level playing field, and that the rules are there. They don't favor good people generally, whether men or women. They're designed for a certain type of people. But without looking at the role that INEC plays, the role that states, independent electoral commissions play, the role that the recs play in our elections, even the role of the collation chairs who are sometimes picked from the academic institutions. If we don't look at all those things, then we're not telling the truth about our elections. Another thing that I learned from my experience, and I think we are all sort of experiencing now, is that really by the time we're voting on election day, the truth is, I think the major battle for representation is lost. Sometimes I would wager that up to 90% of that battle for a decent representation through the ballot has been lost because the primaries have been designed to ensure a certain type of Nigerian emerges from that process. So voter turnout is declining steadily since 1999. People are losing faith in the process. Less people are coming out to vote. And it's funny, it's also, our voter turnout is declining, not exactly in the same rate as women's representation is declining, but the truth is, while with women's representation, we saw an uptick between 1999, it was steadily growing till 2007. That ended in 2000, that upward trajectory ended in 2007, and now we have a downward trajectory. And we see that voter turnout, though, is just a steady decline, going all the way down. Is anybody's guess what's going to happen in 2027? So there's the scenario, the other thing that I think is important to raise about women's political participation and endangering is that the policies for the social costs, and I think I mentioned that when talking about playing the game and level the playing, social costs for women to be part of politics is a lot higher. The type of, and I would definitely not traumatize anybody in this audience by trying to repeat the things we have heard over the last few weeks about Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan, the types of venom that have been, invectives that have been poured on her, and even just, a few days ago on Mrs. Obi Ezekwesili for daring to, again, somebody might argue, play the game the way the men are playing it, but basically trying to follow the rules and present another petition on behalf of Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan. So for people who watch those really painful, shocking videos, you sometimes think that as a Nigerian, you've seen and heard it all, but you can still be shocked by it. So the political situation, whether it's through the primaries, whether it's through the election days, are sort of designed to keep certain people out. And I'm sure that when people watch Double Minority, they will see the examples of that. Now, what's the way forward? That's not entirely my brief, but it's always difficult to have these kinds of conversations, raise these types of issues and the challenges, and not at least speak somewhat to what can we do. And to be honest, I think we're doing partly what we can do by having this convening here today, by trying to use culture and art, movies, documentaries to engage on these issues, because sometimes maybe this is the route that is easier for people to accept, to see in a different way, in a fictionalized, non-fictionalized way, but in a dramatic way, what the realities are. There's a hope that, you know, between Nollywood and our film industry, documentary film industry, that there'll be more and more movies that portray the realities, but also portray what the possibilities are. I like to say that what keeps me encouraged about Nigeria is that there's so much that we haven't tried yet. In a way, we've been doing the same thing since 1960, at least as far as our elections and governance are concerned. Even though we changed from a parliamentary system to a presidential system, the ethos of our politicians have not changed. The same complaints we had about parliamentarians in the First Republic are the same complaints we're having about parliamentarians now in the Fourth Republic. So there are certain things that haven't changed, don't seem to change. The way we use power, the invectives against women, all those things have not changed from time. And so what's encouraging are the things that we have not yet changed, and there's a possibility to change those things. So I will close with saying, I still think that running for office is one of the best things that I ever did. And I encourage other people to do that. I hope that the movie that we're about to see, The Minority, will also encourage people and not discourage people. I would also say that it's time for us to think, and again, it sounds like a cliche, but we really need to think heterodoxly about what can be done about Nigeria. And we need both men and women of conscience and ideas to come together and organize in a way that will help us to sort of try to regain some of the space that we've lost over the decades to those who keep winning elections and those who keep being in charge of governance. It would seem like I've spoken more generally than about women. The reason that I gave that story, and the truth is, before I'm accused of plagiarism, that story is not my story. It's a story, it's called, and it's much longer. I just adapted a few lines from it, but it's called The Ones Who Walk Away from the Omelas. And it's by a very thoughtful, intelligent female writer, Ursula K. Le Guin. And I adapted that. And the truth is, that story is a metaphor for the things that society sacrifices on the altar of wanting progress. The question we should ask ourselves, because I described a Nigeria that does not exist, I described a heaven of sorts, you know, where things, a land of milk and honey, where everything is good. All that on the back of this young girl who's been sacrificed to live in that basement for the greater good. So in Nigeria, I see women and girls as the sacrificial lambs of Nigeria, but then we look around and Nigeria is not the land of milk and honey. So what are we sacrificing them for? I think that's the question I want to leave with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for her once again. We are really running behind schedule, and would like to pick up the program pretty quickly so that we can catch up and move on. We would have, if we can still have Madam Ayisha join us for the panel. I'm not sure because, excuse me, she mentioned that our time also is very tight, and we are trying to make sure that she's able to do some other things that she's had on her schedule. So we will be able to have questions for her based on our presentation during the panel if she's available for us. But now we would go into the screening of double minority. And after that screening, we'll be going into the panel discussion. Is the technical team ready for us? Okay. Yeah, so double minority dives, of course, into what many of the things that we have seen today follows as well in terms of female representation in politics and the gender issues that arises from how the society relates with the female gender. Double minority is looking into, taking that conversation further in terms of women who are currently in the political scene in Nigeria and what they are to face to get to where they are and the things that they've had to do differently from men just to get their voices heard. So if the technical team is ready for us, we'll go into double minority and then we'll pick the conversation after that. Thank you.